This is Brand2Brand Happy Hour, where marketing meets good company, great ideas, and even better drinks. All right, let's kick things off.
Welcome, everyone, to Brand2Brand's first ever happy hour. This is a spontaneous, sporadic, and special, hopefully, series where we're going to invite marketing experts in to sit at our table, crack a cold one, and talk about insights and trends in marketing, business, branding. Today's episode, we're also going to be featuring Bent Water beer. So our friends at Bent Water have kindly allowed us to purchase some beer to drink on the show. So we're going to do that. And Barb Reilly, who's our first ever guest of Brand2Brand Happy Hour, is the president of the Ad Club, Boston's premier trade association for marketing and advertising, which Barb just told me before this is one of the oldest in the country. Super cool. A lot of Boston pride. You're going to hear our accents come out the more we enjoy the Bent Water. Barb has had 20 years of experience working at advertising agencies before taking all of that expertise and transitioning into a fractional CMO role, where she has worked for Fortune 500 companies down to small startups and everything in between. So we're really excited today to get Barb's unique perspective joining us for Happy Hour on the rise of the fractional CMO. So welcome, Barb, to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it. And you're kind because it's 20 plus years. You're being so kind. And I didn't really realize I was the first, but boy, you know me. A beer, happy hour, and marketing. Pretty good combo.
It. Should we crack these open then?
I've been waiting for you to invite me.
Okay, awesome. So we're drinking, we both chose the Shaka, which is a West Coast style pale ale. Oh my God, that was the best crack noise ever. So kicking us right off, I was reading a Boston Globe article announcing when you stepped into the president role of the Ad Club, and someone described you as bringing, the words were passion and brilliance to the organization. So in us preparing for this episode, your passion for the fractional CMO role and everything in advertising is so clear. Could you shed some brilliance for all of us right now and tell us in your own words why you think this role is so interesting for brands or companies to consider, and how does it vary from the traditional CMO role?
I mean, it's a lot to unpack, but I think that I'll start first with the genesis of fractional. 7 years ago when I was at Arnold and I was a managing partner at Arnold, you know, I was close to the C-suite in most of my client engagements, and I was really having that opportunity to make an impact on a brand. I knew I wanted to be a CMO. And I thought long and hard about going out into the world to become a CMO, but I really, I didn't know if I could. I didn't know what kind of brand. My experience covers a lot of different categories, so I wasn't really sure. And I thought maybe I could just go and do, the word at the time, freelance. And I got a call, interestingly enough, from someone who is in private equity who was looking for a fractional CMO. And I kept asking the question, what is a fractional CMO? I thought it was going to be a freelance CMO. And as I got into the discussion, it was really clear to me that fractional CMOs have a place in companies that have a very defined scope of work. There are, typically smaller brands at that time tended to be not able to afford seasoned expert talent in the marketing arena. The word freelance and contract's been around forever. I mean, freelancers have been around as long as we know. And even before the pandemic, the world of freelancers was growing because companies were scaling back and some top talent was out in the marketplace. But private equity had a portfolio of brands, and they wanted to sort of, put somebody in here 20%, put somebody in there 30%. They owned the CMO in that case, but they would deploy them for the brands that they were investing in a way to make their investment pay off. They saw the value creation that a CMO could give, and they wanted that top talent in those seats. And as I thought that through, that conversation said to me, oh, I get this. That's what I'd like to do. And in my heart, I thought, well, maybe one of these engagements over the next 2 years will allow me a chance to say, all right, I'd love to do that one full time. But here I am 7 years later, and I've been loving this role. And more, and if you read the articles, I'm sure you were looking through, the articles will talk about the rise of the fractional CMO and how did this all shake out? Well, the pandemic probably just put a stick of dynamite underneath it.
Yeah, it seems like the flexibility that it kind of paused the way the cog was spinning and said, is there a different way we can think about the way we do business or market?
Absolutely.
And this seemed like it was a prime opportunity for a role like this to start to rise, as we're making the case for in this episode.
And you think about it, it's now not just CMOs. I have a fractional president role at the Ad Club. I have a fractional CMO job. I think that the C-suite is starting to see more and more. You're starting to see this move from freelance creative, freelance account, freelance whatever, to the C-suite. And if you read some of the data, it suggests that this is going to be continuing. Forrester predicts that somewhat of our labor pool, will be 50% fractional freelance contract. And the truth is, it's the type of companies that I was first getting introduced to, these smaller companies that needed it, but now they're seeing the value even in Fortune 100 companies. And some of the companies that I've been contracted by are bigger.
I'm curious, what do you think are some of the benefits that a brand has, regardless of size, in choosing this role over another? Whether it comes to focus, expertise, the type of talent, what do you think have you even seen in your career that some of the brands have benefited from, even in working with you?
I really think that there's a speed to market thing that's happened over the last 10 years. Everybody's feeling it. Brands want things faster. We need to prove results faster. And I think when you're looking at a C-suite level person, you think about it. Just think about all the hires that have happened. C-suite hires go through rounds of interviews, presentations. Everybody's got to have a say in it. It is incredibly hard to get a CMO in a seat fast, or any C-suite in a seat fast. And I think part of the growth has come from this speed to market phenomena that is, it's dating versus marrying. When they come to me, they're going to date me.
Yeah.
And they have a sense that I have some skills and, they can get me in quick.
Yeah.
And it's easy to get things in through a company at that experience level when it's under the guise of fractional or contract, as opposed to we're getting married.
Right. And you don't have to worry about all the time integrating them into your company culture and the orientation and onboarding,
And
which
yet
is costly.
I do. And yet I do. And yet I'm always integrated. That's the thing.
So you take dating seriously. I love it.
You got to think like that too. That's kind of one of the skills we'll talk about later, is the ability to think like that while knowing that's not your gig.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You got to take that scope of work and you got to go in
And commit to it.
Yeah, it's like you're in this one to win it, and that's your job. Your job is this fractional role, and you're signing up for that. Don't short shrift you or that brand, company, whatever.
Do you feel like any of the brands or the executives that you're working with, do you think they're conscious of the fact that you can learn something in all these different verticals or for all these different brands, and the cross-functional or cross-industry skills and experiences that you can have seems such a value? Whereas before, when you're working siloed in one company, those aren't transferable. Do you find that sometimes those are actually connected and make you stronger when they're unrelated in terms of what the brand does?
Absolutely. And I've that's something I've leaned into my entire career, agency or CMO. I think you are nothing if you aren't a sum total of your experiences.
Yeah. From hearing you talk about this, the passion that you have, and you're so clearly like a student of life and have a passion and a zest for life. And as I drink more of this, I'll continue to pepper you with compliments. So do you feel like there is an ability to focus and hone in on, as you said, like a scope of work? Do you find that when you're working with smaller brands, they don't even know how to define that? Like, are you sometimes coming in and helping to even define what the role is that you're doing? Or do you think usually they have a playbook and you're executing on a perfect vision?
I think it's not just small companies. I think a lot of people think this is what they need, and they'll tell me that's what they need. And I would say that 80% of my scopes of work have some adjustments, because ultimately when you dig in and you get into the role that you're signed up for, you see things from your past experience or things that because they didn't have the expertise in-house, that they're not aware that they really needed. And my job is to try to do what you asked me to do, but my job is also to bring my expertise and say, I think this could benefit you. And most of the time the scope will change because of that.
Right.
And that's okay. But I don't think it's reserved for small companies. I think that's true of even larger businesses that I've had the good fortune to work with. And the truth is that's the beauty of the job.
Do you have a defining moment in your journey, which it sounds like is only starting really in this fractional CMO landscape that you're actively exploring with such intention? Is there a defining moment that stuck out to you so far where it clicked and you went, oh, this completely reinforces that this can work?
I think I always knew it would work, but there was a point in time where I had an aha moment where I said, here I think I went out on a new journey and I just did it on the other side of the coin. Because while I was at Arnold, I was managing a portfolio of brands. And I was interacting with the CMOs and CEOs and the C-suite of many of these large companies. And I was doing a lot of the same activities, but now I'm just doing it for myself. In my own, I'm working basically for a bunch of brands, but for myself, not for a company.
Right.
And I kind of giggled because I thought, oh, I left and I'm kind of doing the same thing. The difference is I'm unencumbered with all the politics. I don't really get involved in any of the politics of a company.
Right.
And I do work for myself. So I define who I work for, what clients I take, what hours and days that I need. I am really very choiceful now about who I work with, what types of brands I work on. I have that latitude to do now, which is, I realize how privileged I am for that. So there's not a big aha that I knew it would work. There was a big aha that said, I've already done this before, now I'm doing it differently. But I love it. I love the business. I love the creativity and the innovation. I have a real passion for brands that are out there trying to do good in the world, whether it's the product itself or the fact that they are one of those companies who puts money where their mouth is.
Yeah, that's such an aspirational point, I think, for a lot of people to get to in marketing, is to be selective with the brands, but also the people that you work with, which I know is something you've spoken about before, the nature of the kindness or respect in even an agency brand partnership is something that stood out to you. You know, I'm curious, I was raised on stand-up comedy. My brain works in analogies. I was a comparative literature major, so please humor me. I always think about when it comes to marketing, there is such a broad range of expertise and skill sets and things that you just need to know about and trends that are changing and policies even when it comes to everything becoming more technical. Do you feel like a fractional CMO should think of themselves more like a Swiss Army knife where they have all these different tools in their tool belt that they can use? Or is there another analogy or something that it's more similar to that you feel like better defines what that role should be?
It's such a great question. I've never actually thought of it that way, but I do think the good CMOs are really flexible and agile. And I actually think every person in marketing, and as a young person who's building their career, should be thinking, I need to have experience in a bunch of different industries. As you build your portfolio and your experience set, it's probably really smart to keep looking to challenge yourself, to bring in new experiences. I personally would have been bored silly if I hadn't been challenged. I couldn't have done it if I hadn't constantly been given new assignments, new categories, new things to learn and do. If you're in marketing, what you can never forget is that it is a business at the end of the day. And that's the one thing that, all marketing people have to remember. And going on to the client side has reinforced this for me. If you are not thinking constantly about how am I driving some value creation and what is the definition of that value creation for this business,
right,
you failed.
Right.
And I can recall so many times being spent on the agency side where the big thing was this campaign, it's going to be great, look at how smart it is, look at this great creative, all important, really important, and I would never minimize the importance of that. but that has to be connected to what is it doing to make the goal happen.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just art, and this is art for a purpose, and the purpose is to drive revenue.
And everybody knows that intuitively,
Yeah.
but the conversation on the other side is so geared towards that result.
Do you find that in the fractional CMO role, is that something that is already predefined what those KPIs will be? Or again, is that something that you might be determining what are the methods that you're going to be measuring that success with?
I think most of the assignments I've walked in on, there's always something that's in the CEO or the founder's mind. But most of the time, as we go through the plan, you'll find that the KPIs change, and it's all different by company.
Right.
I mean, it could be when I went to PopCorners.
Yep.
Great brand, incredible leadership team. Love that assignment more than I can even describe. Taught me so much. Really, truly magical time in my career was that assignment. They were very clear. It was so very defined what I needed to walk in and do. It was they needed to get to a certain level of sales in order to be attractive for a sale.
Gotcha.
They'd already had a round of investment. They really were looking to get the brand well known and get more sales on e-com and off shelf. Their ACV, their distribution was terrific. But it really needed to, and in this competitive snacking environment, a better for you entry, they were doing great. They just needed to accelerate.
Well, I saw you on an interview talking about, you asked, it was the first time you had PopCorners on a JetBlue flight, and it was for me.
Really, think about my two worlds.
I know. I was like, wait a minute, I'm seeing a connection here.
The truth of the matter is, if you're, really paying attention, you're going to know what that goal is in the interview, and you're going to, dig deep into your experience set to pull up all your tools to say, I know how to get to that goal. But other goals show up. Other goals make themselves known as you go through the process.
Gotcha. I was thinking about asking you this question, and now I'm envisioning like a 1950s Mad Men era advertising board of men in suits deciding this. But you're looking at a room like that, and there are these skeptical, maybe old school, traditional ways of doing business, and you had to try to maybe sell a skeptic or pitch them on why a fractional CMO is something that would make sense for the goals of that business. What would you say to them that you think would get them to perk up? Because we do have some folks listening, not to call you out that you're wearing a suit right now in a boardroom in the 1950s, but who are just, this is so new to them that they might just think, oh, not for me, this isn't as applicable. What do you think would get them to maybe hear that opportunity? I
don't think fractional is right for every size company or type of company, or it depends on their life stage. But for those that might fit the bill, they'd fall into the category of they're going through some kind of a really big transformation, or they are small and just simply can't afford it. Or, maybe it's you need a full-time CMO, but right now, that process is going to take so long. If we could just get the talent in here so we could get going. Somebody who's able to, hit the ground running. Or truthfully, there's all sorts of life stages I've worked for in this capacity. The ones that pull me in, that I don't have to sell, just really appreciate the impact that marketing has on the business. And they'll just say, I'm not going to spend that money on just a junior marketing person or a VP of marketing. I need someone who can stand in the room and tell a story and interface with the board and has experience with us, helping to get something sold. Part of it is to help shore up a, best-in-class marketing team and resources, not just the in-house team, but to really look at the entire arsenal. And one of the things that Paul and Dan at PopCorners were asking me to do was, we really need to get the brand known. We're in a really competitive category, and we need best in class. We need to break above the noise. We need this quickly, and we need somebody who's got the experience to do it.
Something that you're kind of hitting on and that we've talked about is the complexity that businesses are faced with and that marketing teams are faced with. Something Tom and I have talked about on the show before is that magic mix between when to in-house something versus working with an agency. We're now introducing and talking about a fractional CMO. What does that relationship or navigating that look like? Are you ever working with brands that have a relationship with an agency that you're now directly middlemaning that, or you're guiding them on an agency to work with? Like, are you ever saying, because you are somebody who values what advertising or marketing agencies inherently do and can bring to the table, you have that unique perspective to say, here's when we can keep something in-house, or here's when we can pull someone in? Is that an experience you've had in the fractional role?
Yeah, all of my engagements require an agency or freelance help. I'm a huge fan of great marketing talent, great creative, but when you really want to scale up, you can't. I mean, it's much better to hire an agency that's got the talent, the experience. I almost always get outside talent. I build in, but I'll build out too.
Yeah.
I don't think there's one example where I don't have in-house strength without outside fresh eyes perspective.
It seems like the best of both. It's kind of like the fractional role. Like you're bringing an outsider perspective, and you can bring other outsiders in that also have. It's exactly kind of the case you're making for fractional CMO for an agency partner as well.
Those fresh eyes really make a big difference. You can't see some things when you're inside. You're really just
you're too close to it.
Yeah.
You gotta like have someone pull you back a little bit so you can see the picture a little bit more clearly.
The trick is just making sure you're symbiotic and they understand you. And there's some great ones. I've done a lot of reviews. There's some great talent to work with.
Yeah.
And I love working with. I think it's the best part about the job.
So I think something that has been clear throughout all of this has been, your passion for defining this, telling this story of why fractional CMO authentically. It's not for every brand, but it can be a fit at companies startup to very big with a defined scope. Folks listening to this might be making decisions of who to hire. Whether it is in-house, fractional, a different agency partner, or might, again, be somebody on this track. If you could have and I think I had asked you this before to think about this one, so I didn't put you on the spot, but like a Barb Reilly survival kit, or like a tools that you felt like, even if it was just defined in terms of attributes or skills, like soft skills or hard skills, what do you think are maybe the 3 most important things that somebody considering this path should be thinking that they want to sharpen to keep in that belt?
So if somebody really wants to consider being a fractional CMO, I think that they have to have the stomach for not, it's hard to be in a job and wondering what's coming next, like what's filling the pipeline. That's a real, agencies have new business people for that purpose. Right. So they're always looking for new business, and there's a muscle that you have to exercise to say to yourself, don't worry about it. I talk myself through this all the time. I get to a point where I'm like, well, this contract's going to be ending soon. I should be out there doing, some looking around to say what's going to fill that, pipeline. I'm really lucky, though. I have a really wonderful role that's long-term, and I have that's an amazing benefit. But I have some others where I say to myself, don't, and this is my advice, do not go thinking about what's next. If you put all your energy in the one that you're working on, the one that already hired you, the one that you're doing great work with, just keep doing great work. That will take care of itself. And you have to have the stomach to say, I'm not going to think too far beyond. But I will say that you should put in your contract 2 months before your contract's due to end, because they're all defined. They should be. That you have a sit down and a discussion about what might come next. Is there any opportunity for extension? Are there new scopes of work to add? And if not, at that moment, you can maybe go looking around a little bit, but don't let yourself get tied down. The second thing I would say is really an important skill, and I wouldn't do this role if I didn't feel that I'm good at this, is I am really aware at the preciousness of the relationships within the organization. You're being welcomed into a family. They're already there. They've been there ahead of you, most of them. You have to have a deep respect that you're coming in, and you need to find the way to elicit the relationship quickly, so that you're helping them and helping attain your goal with respect for the fact that you're in and out, and they don't have to know you or try to be friends with you, right? And so it's a tricky relationship thing. The one thing I if I could, just say that that's really important to me is I want to make sure I'm not intruding.
Right.
I'm not the most important thing in their life. I'm not. And I know that I'm just one more person in their busy day. And when I walk into these organizations, 99% of the time, people have, a lot going on.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to be one more person they have to talk to or one more task on their list. And I'm very respectful. And you always have to remember, you want to be there, but they may not care or give you the time of day.
Right.
You're the date. You're not you're not now the new in-law. Right?
Yes.
And I think maybe if I were to say the third thing is if you can't be agile, don't do it. Like you can't. It's just I've seen the best plans and I just don't think you can go in with the premonition that this is going to be a high top role CMO position where you have a large staff. You are doing chief, cook, bottle washer. You're doing everything.
Yeah.
Even though you are a CMO, you have to be as agile and experienced and also as flexible to do absolutely everything that is needed. Most everybody who comes to me as a fractional CMO saying, or wants to be a fractional CMO, has been in a job for a long time, has been well respected, is seasoned, and you have now got to go in and exercise your muscles so differently, and you gotta be prepared for that. I'm having a blast, but I don't know that it's for everyone.
Yeah, it's interesting. You've made this case, right, for why a fractional CMO has so many benefits. We're talking about how it's on the rise. It's being talked about in spaces that most people wouldn't expect to find it. What do you feel like, the rise of the gig economy, the rise of this role, what do you feel like this will have? Will this, I guess, impact any other changes or trends that you see in the next 5 or 10 years, even as it aligns with the fractional president role that you're doing maybe?
I think, it's only gaining steam, and it's probably only gaining steam because companies are under, a lot of financial pressure. The economy is somewhat unpredictable. I think there are a lot of brands that know that marketing does have, value and has impact, but perhaps can't afford a seasoned marketer or, hasn't found the right one yet. I think it's only going to gain steam. And now that the title and the sort of the role has moved into the C-suite, I think we can expect it to continue, especially Forrester says so. I trust them. They're much smarter than me.
I don't know.
In
you're
my
pretty
little
damn
research,
smart.
my little Barb Reilly research, I think it will. I really believe that the things that we haven't talked about, which is the housekeeping side, my contract doesn't include benefits. My contract, is a completely different. I pay for my own everything,
right?
And I am responsible for all my own taxes, and that kind of thing I think could go away as this becomes more real. Mm-hmm. Even under the fractional title, I might be able to get, a seat at the table with equity.
Right.
Or there may be, as we start moving through this, I think there could be 5 years from now, I think the value that a fractional CMO provides is almost as good. I'm giving up a lot of that.
Right.
Because I'm not a full-time employee.
Right.
I've been fine with that. It's really okay. But I think as you start to see this role expand, I bet you there's going to be some change to compensation and change to some of the back end stuff.
Right. Which makes sense. I mean, we saw even culture initiatives and all the pictures of like Google is like ping pong tables and foosballs, and you start to talk about the foosballs. Wow, I just sounded like a boomer in my own right. You see all of these
Don't
crafty,
underestimate the power of a foosball.
I know. Thank you. Right. I mean, it can like spark some creativity,
yes, it can.
But you've seen such a rise in companies to try to attract people that you're hearing of benefits and shifts to benefits like never before. And you are starting to hear of more companies even add some benefits typically reserved for full-time for part-time. So this does seem like people are going to have to ask these questions and have these decisions, and might demand things as this role becomes more in demand of what you might need to be successful in it.
Well, I think as more and more Gen Z become entry into the CMO title that many of them have, but they're very different than my generation, which was, the company rules, employees aren't, in charge. And I think the Gen Z population has it right, which is life comes first. And the pandemic certainly accelerated this. First. I think that the idea is flexibility, reward. My life is first. You don't own me. You're not in control. I don't think that's going away. And that ties a little bit more to this fractional or part-time or contract.
It does.
role.
You don't see anyone who has the job that they had I don't know anyone my age who has the same job they graduated college with, but I have so many people in my parents' group of friends who retired with the company watch. Yeah. And that, you're right, I think that inherently is all kind of cut from the same cloth that we're kind of weaving as the fabric of the business landscape shifts.
I mean, my father's generation was all like, if you weren't there for 25, 30 years, you were a schmuck.
Right. And that was on you.
Yeah. And I really think that, there is a benefit to the balance, and this has afforded me that balance. And I would say to anybody coming in behind, who's still in the, the learning and growing phase of marketing, you do have value, you add value, and you should be compensated for the value you create.
Right.
I did want to go back to in-house agencies for a second, if you don't mind, because I've been thinking a lot about the rise of in-house agencies. I'm so impressed with some of the in-house agencies that are at least in our region. There are some really great in-house agencies, and I have hired a few. In some of my client engagements, I've hired some. They're good. And that kind of speaks to how this industry keeps changing.
Yeah.
It's a talent world.
Right.
And how great that our talent is finally getting recognized. It's really awesome.
Yeah. So Barb, before we wrap up, I want to make sure that we get a chance to really hone in on what you're doing for the ad club, because I think that is a fascinating part of the story of Barb Reilly as this awesome badass brand that I've gotten to know over a couple of years. So could you just speak to what you're doing with the ad club, or about the ad club in general, for folks listening who might not be as aware?
Sure. I do. There's a specific thing I want, because it harkens back to what we were talking about. But in general, I just talked about value. And one of my biggest takeaways is a trade association for an industry. The responsibility is to help the industry create value for themselves and to help grow our industry. And I've really been trying to pivot the entire ad club. And we're not the social, yes, we do social stuff. And yes, we have great events and professional enrichment. And we have some of those things that we've always had that have been loved and done well. But I'm really trying to turn it into a business which is about value creation for everyone that is a member. Right. To that point, going back to this whole discussion on contract help and freelancers, I have seen it explode. And I have seen talent be a problem for companies. They're having a hard time finding the right talent, diverse talent, the right level of talent for a specific, really defined project. And I began to think, like, how is it that we can help? And so I've been talking to the team. And if you are a member, we are about ready to launch in September our first ever talent portal, where if you are a member and you so choose, you get to put yourself out on our portal, our talent portal, and say, I'm available, here's what I do, here's my time availability, and if you're a member person looking for that kind of talent or any kind of talent, you come on. There's no charge. It's just a service to try to connect this new economy of talent. And I call this a brand new economy, but it doesn't have a huge place to find each other, right?
Yeah.
It's not a well-known network of...
So you're creating a dating app for talent in this industry.
I'm going back to the dating. It's all about the
We can't get away from it.
And so I'm really proud of the team for putting this together in short order, but we're launching it in September so that anybody who's a member, if they're an individual and they're just looking to make sure that if somebody needs a freelancer, they can be found.
Fascinating.
And if you're a company, whether it's a large company, small company, and you need a copywriter or you need somebody who's really defined in tech writing,
Yeah.
You can find them.
Oh, that's fantastic. And if anyone wanted to keep up to date with what the ad club's doing or with you yourself, would LinkedIn be a good place to follow
Absolutely.
or connect with the ad club and yourself?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Ad Club is, huge presence on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And I have a presence on LinkedIn, but, anybody can email me or call me. All they have to do is ping me, and I make it a point to say if I can help, I would really like to help.
Oh, that's
Doesn't matter
awesome.
who it is.
I love it. I love it. Well, Barb, thank you so much for stopping by on our first ever Brand2Brand Happy Hour.
I'm loving it. And I also have to stop and say, I love the beer. Thank you, Bent, for letting me drink on the job.
Thank you.
And the shaka.
Yeah.
I'm not sure where I'm supposed to point, but
I think right there, that's your camera.
I'm
the
loving
shaka.
it. I'm loving it.
I love it.
Thanks for having me over for happy hour.
I know. Thank you for stopping by, and for everybody else. That's it for us. But you can stalk us on social media, Brand2Brand the Marketing Show. And if you ever have a recommendation for a lovely guest like Barb or a lovely beer such as Bent Water, please send it our way. And with that, we're out, folks.
That's it for Happy Hour. Cheers to more branding and less boring.